Right, so this is going to be the final video talking about the fashion and deception that's been pushed by the media over the past century, and this one will be from the 1980s until modern days. So, in the 1980s, hair metal was a thing, and this big hair that men and women both had, this was definitely pushing boundaries of what was normal for men, because men didn't have hair this long throughout our history in Western society. So a lot of times, some of these men, you look at them and just think they look feminine, even if they may not necessarily be, just because they've got this long hair, and because we've been conditioned for centuries to think that long hair is female and short hair is male. So pushing this new look for men was again altering perceptions. Now, in this video again, don't be too concerned about the gender of the people that I'm presenting. This is not in order to transvestigate these people, just to show the typical looks from all of these decades, which they do, whether or not they are transgender people. So they also did have short hair for men, again, and then kind of the mullet look and similar hairstyles. So sometimes they also did use more extreme makeup as well, than they had in the past few decades, where it was a little more mild. So this look is quite similar to a kind of 1920s makeup look. Heavy eye makeup, red lipstick, and again, makeup is an artificial means by which people will determine gender. When they look at a face and they see makeup on it, they'll think it looks female, even if it's got male facial traits. There are also milder looks for less extreme people. And again, the short haircut that became sort of the businesswoman and mother haircut, which has existed for women until now. Whereas historically it really was men who had the short hair, so I'm not saying anything's wrong with having short hair, I'm just pointing out. This is what they did. They made it normal after it hadn't been normal for a long time, and it changed people's perceptions. So when they break down the divide and stop some things being categorized as one gender or the other, it means it's much easier to be able to fool people about someone being one gender if both genders are allowed to look both ways and there's nothing that's strictly one gender anymore. They also did have some very boyish kind of cuts for girls that began to be popular then. But you know, they paired this, as I've said before, they always gave you a crutch, so they would pair this new look with the makeup. So you see this and you're reassured, oh yes, it's female, no matter what the hair looks like, it's female because it's got makeup on the face, right? Now in this decade, they also really began to push a body shape that was very male, with wide male shoulders and narrow male hips. Now, in my last video, I did talk about in the 40s they were pushing this kind of look with the body-modifying underwear they wore back then. But back then, what they did is they showed the populace that underwear and showed them that was how they would achieve the same figure as the popular women who had that figure in the media. Now, they're blatantly showing you that this person's skeletal structure is what allows this person to have these narrow hips. They wouldn't have dared do that back in the 40s because people knew that women had wide hips back in the 40s. But by this point, they've gone all through their you're too fat, you're too skinny, your body doesn't look right like this, let's pinch and prod and give you surgery to change your body. They've gone through all of that, and now they're continuing from that point in the 80s and saying, you know, this body is perfectly natural for females, and in fact it's desirable for females, and the most attractive females have this body. So the ideal figure changed immensely, and women, again, they've been feeling inadequate for decades, but they began to feel inadequate about something that actually was not possible to change at all because they don't have a Y chromosome. And going into the 90s, the male haircuts were typically pretty short again. The female hair was not as extreme. The 90s had some more kind of traditional looking female hair, as well as some shorter haircuts. So there was variety, and basically saying women can have any kind of look and it will still be a female, so long as you have the makeup on the face. Don't forget the makeup. Now in the 90s, a very popular clothing look was very baggy clothes, and this, particularly in boy bands, would have been useful to conceal the transgenders, because if you wear something like this, you're not going to be able to tell what the Q angle of the person is. This kind of look with the really baggy clothes still exists in rap in the modern times, and I know for certain that at least one rapper is transgendered, and it's probable there are several more, many more. So anyway, this look in the 90s that they promoted for a lot of children and also adolescent boys, and it really did make it possible for people to conceal their gender. Either way, it's difficult to make out what gender a person is if the body line isn't initially evident. Now again, in the 90s they did love their baggy clothes. It is a great trick to hide transgenders. And another look that was popular in the 90s was the heroin chic look, where they basically were kind of bone thin and wore dark makeup and looked kind of like they were on death's door. And this look makes me really think about the 20s. It's the same kind of depressing, grim kind of feeling as the wild, riotous living in the 20s kind of gave off. But worse, because it's really mixed in with the drug abuse that really started to pick up in the 60s and 70s and continued until now. So, they were promoting a look that had waif-thin women that really didn't look healthy, but that's what they were really promoting as attractive for a few years there. And of course, it is noteworthy that when women are extremely thin, in most cases they will have amenorrhea and will thus be infertile. So, when fashion is promoting an unhealthy lifestyle with substance abuse and also the extreme thinness of females, with bones jutting out being seen as attractive, it's not really a fashion geared toward a healthy society. It's twisted because to teach women that the way they can be most attractive is to be at a size where they are unhealthy, where some of their bodily functions just don't work the same way, and to teach men that that's what women should be looking like and what they should be attracted to teach men to be attracted to something that is barely surviving. So the heroin chic look is gone, but we are still faced with the lingering effect of that, and the very thin bodies thing still hasn't gone away, and I don't think it ever really will, because men naturally have lower levels of subcutaneous body fat than women do. So naturally, MTFs have an easier time looking very thin. So it's a look that they want to promote as something that is very unhealthy for natural women and easier for the MTFs to attain. So basically, what this kind of look has taught people to aspire after and to be attracted to is first the MTF look, or an unhealthy natural woman. Because most women without an eating disorder, without some kind of physical problem, like a thyroid condition or another serious illness, usually women will not be extremely thin. They'll have a little more curve, a little more subcutaneous body fat at a healthy size. So this has taught men to be attracted to men in disguise, and women who are infertile and cannot bear children, if that's the look they're attracted to, that does not bode well for the continuation of the human race, and as we probably all know, that is part of the agenda. The agenda of destruction of natural gender, destruction of morality, destruction of humanity. And into the 2000s, they had varieties of haircuts. Didn't really change too much from the 1990s from my point of view. A lot of girls had long hair, a lot of girls had short hair, They did all the hard work in changing perceptions, so now women will just do whatever, and it means they can have their transgenders do whatever, and people won't really bat an eye. Now, in this decade, this kind of body is what most women I know want to have their body look like. They've really worked on this agenda over the past century, changing perceptions so entirely that women want to have a body that looks male. They want to have narrow hips, no curve to the legs, no curve to the hips, and no curve to the abdomen, nothing. They want to be lean and thin, but of course with those little female identity cheats of the chest and the makeup. So, you can have a body look like anything else, but as long as you've got those two factors, people will still think it's female, and that's what they want to look like. So they'll either want to look like that or kind of a thinner option, is what pretty much all women I know want to look like. And I can't say because I'm not a man, but most men seem to find these kinds of looks to be the most attractive female looks now, so they've done a good job. They've made women want to look like this, and they've made men see it as attractive when these looks are actually very male. As for the ideal male bodies, they do push a figure that's pretty unattainable for men as well. Because, frankly, I don't know a lot of guys who have enough time to spend several days a week doing weight training and being that concerned about their diet so that they can create this kind of look. But they have really upped the pressure on men to have this kind of look recently as well, so they also do give their FTMs steroids, and there's the question of if some of them have implanted muscles, because you can have, pectoral implants and so forth. So they create this standard with biological men and with FTMs that is difficult for real men to attain in a lot of cases. And also, I've seen another really popular look in modern times is really thin men. And while a lot of men are naturally quite thin, I've seen it to unhealthy degrees. And actually, the level of male eating disorders in modern times is unprecedented. People think that eating disorders are something restricted to females, but actually there are a lot of teenage boys and young men who have eating disorders, and eating disorders are very serious. They ruin a person. The eating disorder becomes more important than anything else in that person's life. Their entire perceptions are warped, their relationships with people around them become ruled, dominated by the eating disorder, and it's extremely painful for the people around them as well. So they've done this, they've caused ill health in so many people who have these eating disorders, mental and physical ill health, and I would say that there's probably not anyone who hasn't been touched by the agenda they've been promoting, telling people that their body has to be really muscular or really skinny, and it's not okay if it's not. That applies basically to both genders. Now, another thing that's come about in recent years is long hair for men, and they don't always pair it with the crutch of the beard, which they did in earlier decades. They'll do the kind of man bun thing a lot, but what it's doing is kind of saying that men can have long hair, and that's okay. And again, that's just changing perceptions, changing what you think is normal, because a hairstyle that was typically female for a long time is no longer typically female. I seem to see tons of people with this haircut too, with the kind of shaved portions and the big thing, which, a couple decades ago only the punks and the drug addicts and stuff would do this kind of thing to their hair. But now we even have females doing it, or people who appear female. They'll shave part of their hair and then do the girly thing on the other side. It's, like I said, they're making it so people can do anything, and it makes you completely rely on the crutch of the makeup and the other body modifications, because they are changing perceptions so drastically. So, we still do have typical male looks and typical kind of traditionally feminine looks, and you can just pair the feminine look with the shocking and assist in changing perceptions entirely. So to summarize, I'll just talk about a few tactics that they can use to fool us. Now, first of all, if you just look right here, only at this side, you would think this person has a female Q angle, because right here from where the thigh bone connects to the hip, there is an angle. It comes in at an angle, and this is what walking with the catwalk does. They push the hips out completely to one side and make sure to sway the pelvis and move around excessively in order to create this look. So if you look at the whole picture, you can notice that this side is completely flat, and this evident Q angle is only a result of moving the hips completely to the side. And this is very clear to see when you find a picture of the same person standing straight. You can see this person has completely straight male legs. So it's not just body modifications, it's not just hormone use, it's not just makeup, it's not just fashion. They do know how to walk to fool you as well. They do know how to walk, how to pose. They're very good at mimicking the gender that they're supposed to be. Now, I've mentioned this before too, and it's not going to be extremely helpful for transvestigating, but it is worthwhile to notice these things that are different between the genders. I've talked about how testosterone will darken skin and will darken hair. So someone with the same genetic coding as another person, if one's male and one's female, the male will have darker hair and darker skin than the female will. So this is something you can notice in people in your real everyday life, is that typically females will be lighter and males will be darker. Now again, don't worry about whether these people are transgendered or not, because they are exhibiting that kind of look that I'm talking about. The one that looks female has everything just a little bit lighter, and the one who looks male. This is very typical, and this is also something that we've really forgotten, and that's partially because of the obsession with tanning in modern society. Because everyone has been so determined to get tanned skin, every Caucasian person, they've forgotten that we actually do have slight differences between males and females. And you can see that in any world population, you can see that in East Asia, you can see that in Africa. Typically the females will be lighter than the males. So, again, while this may not be useful for transvestigating, because I'm not sure how much the hormones will affect these people, I'm not sure how much it changes their skin tone compared to what it would have originally been, it is useful to, at least for ourselves, remember that we do have differences between the gender, even down to things as inconspicuous as the shade of our hair. I've talked about this before too, and this is another thing in the same vein. Typically females, I've found, will have sparser eyelashes than males will. So eyelash length is coded by genetics. I'm not talking about that. There's long eyelashes and short eyelashes, two different genes that you can have. But the actual growth of eyelashes, the thickness of the hair growth, typically seems to be greater in males. And I've mentioned before that this is very interesting to me because of how much they've pushed women to wear eye makeup and wear lots of mascara. When typically a female next to a male, if neither of them is wearing eye makeup, typically the male will look like he's got kind of more luscious eyelashes. I'll compare people of the same race here. There's not a lot going on there with her eyelashes, and she's not wearing false ones, compared to him, who's got more going on there. Same thing with her. There's not a huge amount of growth going on here compared to here. Obviously, these two people have different hair color, but you can still tell there's overall just more of a growth on this person than on this person. For these ones, I'm actually very confident that this is a female, this is a male, this is a female, this is a male. So I'm showing you these people. So isn't it interesting that they've kind of warped that as well, that they try and get females to have lashes that are actually sort of more like male lashes naturally. Now, I got this picture off the internet as well, a photo of a girl who didn't shave her legs for quite a period of time. Now, as I've talked about before, the removal of body hair has created an artificial standard, another artificial standard, by which we will classify someone as female. So if they don't have body hair, we say they're female. It doesn't matter what the body looks like, as long as it's hairless, it's probably going to be female, right? But look at the difference in this hair growth compared to a male's hair growth. This is so much more extreme. The quality and the thickness of the hair is so much more extreme than you find on the female. So they created this artificial standard, and I believe that was because they weren't confident that, that their hormone treatments could eliminate this look on their MTFs, so they had to remove it at the beginning. Now it may be easier, and now they have laser treatments, waxing and everything. They have means to remove it more easily and semi-permanently on their MTFs. But I do believe it was done as a cautionary thing to pave the way to allow people to not recognize their transgenders, because they created that artificial standard. So when you see legs like this, you're going to think they're female, right? They're wearing high heels, they have no hair. You're not going to care about anything else. The only thing that's important in this case is that they have no hair on them. So they must be female. And as I've mentioned before, the high heels issue, it changes the tilt of the pelvis in the person who's wearing it, so it can help MTFs look a little bit more like females, because their spine will appear a little more bent when they wear these heels. This front portion draws the eye more than the smaller back portion of the heel, and so as it's small, it's kind of an optical illusion and makes you believe the foot is smaller than it is, so it's a good way to disguise MTF feet. And as for implants, yet another artificial means they've used to make their MTFs look more female, of course, but also to make females look more like the MTFs. Because if they can get regular women to put these into their bodies, then it makes a lot of women look more unnatural, and it eliminates the divide between the fake women and the real women, because the real women try to look like the fake women. Plenty of real women in the regular population have cosmetic surgery. It's not just transgenders who get it done. Because of this agenda, we are left with women with severe self-esteem issues, and there are plenty of people who get cosmetic surgery. And if you look at the statistics for breast implants in your country, the yearly statistics, you might actually be quite surprised at how many women are getting implants. I've looked at a few reports from a few different countries, and if you think about it, you think about the yearly procedures that are being done, it's actually not an inconsiderable amount of women who are having these procedures done, so they make natural women feel inadequate about their natural bosom, and so they get it implanted to look like the MTFs, and then all women start looking plastic and fake, even though they are natural women. So essentially this agenda over the past century has flourished and completely changed the perceptions of people. It's still got a bit of a ways to go. It's not over yet, it's still in operation, and the end goal is to eliminate gender, to promote androgyny. First, of course, they had to make it acceptable for one gender to do what the other gender does, to wear what the other gender does. They did these things that they might collapse it all at this point and kind of make it a free-for-all. You can do whatever, the satanic mentality of do what thou wilt. Except in a world where this agenda is being pushed, not only just in a personal sense, but in a political sense, we begin to have our personal freedoms eliminated. So they may preach do what thou wilt, but it will become do what we say. And that, unfortunately, is that.